Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 26th episode of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is The Sooner the Better, an interview with Think Lyme founder and CEO Randi Goodman. My name is Richard Johannesson.
And I'm Matt Sabatello.
Randi Goodman is a marketing executive and manager with over 20 years' experience. In her career, she has been responsible for the negotiation, development, and growth of key programs with some of the country's largest corporations, including Dell, FedEx, Hertz, Boston Coach, Dow Jones, and Businessweek. In 2018, after a personal battle with Lyme disease, she leveraged her marketing skill set to launch the platform Think Lyme with the goal of advocating for the advancement of physician and patient awareness for early Lyme disease diagnosis. Randi Goodman, thank you for joining us on our podcast.
Thank you both so much for having me. Truly honored to be here. And really wanted to thank you both for all the work that you're doing on behalf of the Lyme community.
So, Randi, can you share with our listeners a little bit about your background before you began to show symptoms of a tick disease?
Yeah, I'm a married mother of twins. I lead a full, busy, active, and successful life. I have my own marketing consulting firm, Randi Goodman Consulting. For the past 4 years, I've been contracted for a digital marketing agency, W Promote, out in California. I graduated from the University of Michigan, and I just lead a very full, busy life.
So, Randi, before you began to show the symptoms of a tick disease, what were your desires?
You know, being a mother is my, priority, and wife, having, a successful career, just balancing it all. Somehow, I don't know how I balance it all, but, somehow I just keep all the balls in the air and keep on going.
So how did the symptomology of your tick disease interfere with your desire to be the mother, the wife, and the professional that you had sought to be?
Yeah, really took me by surprise. I mean, nothing has really physically brought me down. I'm someone who doesn't get sick. I'm someone who, has full energy at all times. So to be physically impaired, I think, was what really struck me. Part of me didn't acknowledge it. I mean, there was a point where I couldn't walk. It was like a dead weight under my feet, and I was dragging my feet. But I would ignore it. I would keep on going. I almost couldn't believe that this was happening to me, and I didn't want to acknowledge it, to be honest.
Randi, can you describe and walk us through your symptoms when you started getting sick?
Yeah, at the time, it was May 2016. I was under a great deal of stress. It was like the perfect storm was brewing. I remember one day at work, I just felt feverish, almost like flu-like symptoms. And normally I can power through any cold, any sickness. I couldn't. I remember I drove home from work and I just got right into bed. My daughter made me dinner, and that was it for the night. I was out for the count, which would never happen. And then the next morning I was miraculously fine. It was fine. It was like nothing happened. And I was like, cool, I'm good, back to normal life. Then I would say a month later, in June, I played tennis competitively. My best friend is my doubles partner. So it was like the third set of a tennis match, and we were about to win the game and win the set. And it was 90 degrees heat. And I just remember all of a sudden there were cramps in my toes, and they climbed, and they got so severe. It was attacking my calves, excruciating pain, debilitating, and I collapsed right then on the court. We forfeited, couldn't play, and my partner, she just looked in amazement. I mean, if she didn't see it with her own eyes, to this day, she says she wouldn't have believed it. And I was in such pain. It took like an hour for the cramping to subside, and I dismissed it. And I was fine, just sore the next couple of days, and went on with my life. And then a month later, the same episode happened, 90-degree heat, tennis match, not as severe as the first, but it did attack me. I was out for the count, except the symptoms didn't go away. They started to mysteriously change and evolve. Then I got numbness and tingling in all of my extremities. Then my back went out. I've never had back pain. My back totally went out. I couldn't move. I went to a physiatrist. I got MRIs. I got EEGs. Such pain. One day I remember going to the emergency room straight from work. My whole family met me there. They did a battery of tests. Everything was normal. It was just bizarre. Then the numbness tingling turned into paralysis. I couldn't move my legs. It was like, again, a dead weight. I remember like limping, but I just kept on going. It was like, I just kept on going. Nothing was wrong with me, right? Every doctor dismissed me. I was a perfect specimen of health. And so I was like, all right, I don't know. My body's just got to heal. Maybe it was just under trauma from those cramping events. So I just kept on going and going. But then it was like mind racing started and paranoia and brain fog. I couldn't cognitively, I couldn't operate at the same capacity. I remember like I would stare in front of my computer. I couldn't get as much done. And my sister-in-law recommended that, I go see someone for this. And someone gave me the name for this doctor out in Manhasset, Dr. Jeremy Kaplan, who's a psychiatrist. And I went in to get Lexapro. I said, I've never been on antidepressants in my life, but I'm going to give it a try. I can't feel this way anymore. And I went in for a Lexapro prescription, and I came out with a Lyme disease diagnosis. So you don't need Lexapro, you have Lyme.
And Randi, prior to this, your primary care physician recommended you to a rheumatologist who ran a battery of tests, including the ELISA Lyme test, correct? And that came back negative then?
It came back negative. My Anna titer was, slightly elevated. Outside of that, again, he dismissed me. Perfect specimen of health. He did, he brought up Lyme, but it was negative. I did ask to see, I knew enough to ask to see the Western blot, which at the time I can't believe. And I remember seeing band 23.
And Randi, that's not uncommon because we know the Lyme testing, the ELISA testing is very, very inaccurate.
Correct. Now I know that if you have one band, that is sufficient.
So now fast forward, you're going to your psychiatrist and right away you have Lyme disease, right? So how do you react? What are your feelings?
I knew in my heart I was not depressed. I knew in my heart that I didn't want to go on antidepressants. I knew that that was not right. I was, really against it, but it was like, I had no choice here. I couldn't live like this. So part of me was like relieved because I knew myself enough, I knew that there was something else going on. I kept on saying it was like aliens invaded my body. This was not my body at all. I didn't recognize it. I did not recognize my body. So part of me was almost like, I told you so, Randi, like I knew. So when I got the diagnosis, it made sense. It made sense.
So Randi, when you finally got the tick disease diagnosis, did you begin to now recount the contact that you had with ticks during the course of your life?
Yes. So I did have a known tick bite at age 9. I remember, I was sleeping and I felt the back of my head. And my parents, they called their friends over. I remember them getting it out of my head. I remember feeling it in my scalp. So that was a known tick bite. Other than that incident, there was no other known bite. In May of 2016, though, when I was playing tennis, I remember the ball went over the fence, and I volunteered to get the ball, and it is a tick-infested area out on Long Island, and I did get the ball that day. Thinking about it, I could have been rebit that very day.
So Randi, what did you know about ticks, and what precautions did you take to protect yourself from having contact with ticks?
I knew enough to check for them, be aware, but I didn't wear bug spray every single day. I didn't make my kids wear bug spray every day. I didn't do daily tick checks. I knew of them. I just, I think people think like it's just not going to happen to you.
How many doctors did you see, Randi, before you got your Lyme diagnosis?
It was close to a dozen and 2 emergency room visits.
Were you misdiagnosed with anything else before?
Nothing. Perfect specimen of health. My health was always great.
So Randi, it sounds like your tick disease developed very quickly. It went from a tick bite to neurological Lyme very, very quickly. Do you have any thoughts on why that happened?
Again, I think it was the perfect storm. I think, the point of my life, I was weakened. I was under a great deal of stress, handling a lot on my plate. I think it was just a matter of time that something brought me down. I think, perhaps these microbes lived dormant in my system harmoniously for years. And there wasn't the opportunity for them to show their face. I think this was, again, the perfect storm.
So now that you got your Lyme diagnosis and you're working with your psychiatrist to treat the Lyme, what was your treatment protocol moving forward?
He started me immediately on minocycline, very slowly. Started, 2 or 3 days, and I herxed, pretty quickly. We slowly increased it, to every day, and then to twice a day. I was weeks, he said I was weeks away from a wheelchair. Like, he just couldn't believe that I came in at that time, and got diagnosed and that he caught it. And, a month later, he introduced, rifampin, based upon my symptoms. Bartonella, he believes I had, as well as Lyme. I think the rifampin, I reacted very strongly to. That, definitely was a tough medication to take. The herxing was extreme. There were times I was like, I don't think I'm going to get through this. Somehow I did. Somehow I went to work every day. Somehow nothing slipped. I still don't understand how I did it, but I think it was the rifampin that really turned the corner for me. After a few months, I remember, like, the light went on. I was like, I feel normal again. It was amazing.
Randi, can you describe for our listeners what herxing is and what those symptoms were for you?
Yeah, herxing is basically the die-off of spirochetes. So as the bacteria are being killed off, it's almost like your symptoms are exacerbated. So you feel them more intensely than ever. So it's, a really bad flare-up. You have to manage it. I would scale back. There were times it was, so bad, heart palpitations, and I couldn't breathe properly, tightness in my chest. And he would, scale back the medication appropriately. And I would have to manage my symptoms. I would have to, take Epsom salt baths. You have to detoxify as you're herxing. So I would take Epsom salt baths. I would dry brush every single day. All of this helps to remove the dead spirochetes that are dying off in your body as a result of treatment.
Could you explain to our listeners, or for our listeners, what dry brushing is?
It's literally like a dry brush. People use it to exfoliate, and it's just bristles, natural fiber bristles, and you just brush it on your skin every single day. Take the brush, and it detoxifies all the impurities out of your skin. Everybody should be using a dry brush every single day. It's just a basic self-care principle. And then the magnesium in the Epsom salt helps to also detoxify and draw the impurities out of your system.
Randi, after you started the antibiotics and were herxing really bad, when did you start to feel better?
I would say probably 3 months.
Did you stop the antibiotics at that point?
No, I continued for probably 9 months straight. And then I felt strong enough, healthy enough. I just made the decision to go off the antibiotics. I wish I kept a low level amount in my system because I did, regress slightly after that. I would feel symptoms again.
So the thought was you were feeling almost 100% better. You wanted to stop the antibiotics, and then you realized that you started to feel sick again and wished you really didn't go off them so quickly, correct?
Correct.
Randi, why did you stop the antibiotics?
I just wanted to feel normal. It was like, this was such a nightmare. It was like literally you feel like, the only way to describe it is you feel like you're in the Twilight Zone. I'm a happy-go-lucky person, full of life. I want to live, right? Like, taking supplements, watching my diet. That was never something I did ever. I just wanted to go back to normalcy. I just wanted to forget all of this. I realize now, this is something that you have to manage for the rest of your life, keeping your immune system up. Self-care is a new principle I've adopted. I need to get better at it, but definitely, have made strides. I do things differently now. I look at the world differently. I look at day to day. Everything's different now.
Now, at this point, you start to feel sick again. You stop the antibiotics. What did you do next?
Then I would go on for 2 weeks, which I know now is, not the right thing for your body. And then I just made the decision I'm going to get tested properly. I never got tested properly with IGeneX and Galaxy because my symptoms came on so quickly and suddenly. And I made the decision that, I was going to a Lyme literate doctor in Manhattan and to do this right. So right now I'm under her care.
And Randi, I'd like to take a step back because you actually saw the psychiatrist on Long Island, New York, who first diagnosed you. And, Rich and I know that we've been at a couple of conferences recently where they've said there are no Lyme literate doctors here on Long Island, but it seems that that's not correct. Can you mention who your doctor was so people here that are listening from Long Island are aware of this doctor?
It's Dr. Jeremy Coplin out in Manhasset. He is a gift. Probably only 2 doctors I ever encountered in my life quite like this. Just his approach is completely different. Listens, studies you. It's almost like his intuition combined with experience comes into play. So like a real diagnostician. He could have just easily just prescribed antidepressants for me. Like that would have been, I would have accepted it, and that would just, would have masked my symptoms, and I would have gone. No, it's just he's a very special person and man. I mean, he saved my life.
Now, you're back in New York City. You're seeing this Lyme literate doctor, and that kind of brings us almost to today. What are you doing with this Lyme literate doctor?
Well, I get my full panel of results back in mid-July. I've started a new antibiotic protocol. So I'm entering, probably the 3rd week of that protocol, and we'll, adjust as necessary, based upon my test results.
What percentage would you say you're back to normal today?
I think it depends on the day. Like some days I'll say 60, 70%, and other days I'll say, 95, 100%. I think it just depends on the day. Anyone who's going through this, it's amazing. You can have just a really bad day or 2 days, and then you can feel like $1 million and you don't feel anything. For me, it's when I'm stressed, overworked, which unfortunately is my lifestyle. That's when I feel it the most. So I'm very self-aware. Then it's, I got to introduce the self-care regimen. I got to take a step back. I got to adjust things. But I never felt anything before. So for me, having this, it's just, I still can't believe it. I never had physical ailments.
Randi, how are you using your skills? You mentioned earlier that you are presently an account manager now, and you focus on web design, web development, creative services, email marketing, paid search and social media ads. You've taken those skill sets and you've brought them over to the Lyme world to help the Lyme community, correct?
Absolutely. I am so outraged and baffled by the lack of awareness in diagnostics and testing and treatment, as well as the resistance of the medical community. I just had to do something. I literally one day just sat down, used my skills, and I just need to make a difference. I need to help people. I need to get the message out. And I developed, it's called Think Lyme. And the whole premise behind it is just if physicians would be knowledgeable about Lyme disease, they would cut half of the battle down, which is diagnostics. I wouldn't have needed to see 12 doctors. I could have been on treatment earlier, which would have helped my recovery. So if only doctors would think Lyme when people would cross their office, just think about it, test it, exhaust the possibility. That is half the battle for patients. My doctor thought Lyme. Otherwise, I don't know what would happen. I'd be in a wheelchair. I was weeks away from a wheelchair.
Well, Randi, it was actually your 12th doctor that thought Lyme.
Right.
Can you share with us how the Think Lyme journey has changed you? What has changed in your perspective?
I think giving back. I think really being on the side, being an advocate for people. There's so many silent sufferers out there that don't have a voice. Being their voice, that I'm able to put together informational website, a blog, social media outreach, and help people. Be that voice for the people that just can't. I mean, it's a very lonely journey. I had to do all the research for myself to figure this whole thing out.
Randi, why do you think doctors don't think Lyme? Why did you need to get to a heroic doctor after 11 failures before there was someone brave enough to think Lyme?
Frankly, they're just not educated. They're not educated. There's political stigmas out there in the medical community that have almost made them shy away from Lyme. You could see it in their facial expression. You know what doctor is Lyme friendly and what doctor is not, just by bringing up the word Lyme. You could see it in their facial expression. We need more Lyme literate doctors out there. So any additional education courses, CME courses, anything that we can do to get physicians educated is half the battle. So I think that that's going to be my next step. You know, my first thing was just developing a platform, getting the voice, helping people, because so many people now are having symptoms and they're coming to me thinking that they have Lyme. And so I needed to develop a platform that I could direct them to and help them. So now that the voice is established, I think the next part in this journey is education.
Randi, one of the things that really surprises me, and we've been seeing it a lot on social media now this time of year, where many vet organizations are sharing Lyme disease and tick disease information on their social media profiles, as well as putting up signs in their offices. But you don't really see that in doctors' offices. And I think back to my journey and your journey on Lyme, if we saw an informational flyer online, we probably would have caught this disease sooner, right?
Correct. If you put the pieces together, it would have been a light bulb in your head, right? But you didn't know enough. I now tell everybody I can about this disease. I mean, my friends are so educated. They're checking their dogs, they're checking their children, they're spraying before their kids go to camp, they're spraying their clothes with permethrin. I mean, anything to make a difference. And then there's some people out there they have no clue, and there are doctors out there, no clue. Reading the Western blot, they don't have any idea. It's negative. But if those doctors have a red flag of just one band, their patient has one band, and you just dismiss it, they're not educated.
But I have a question for you, Limeys, and that is, do you really think that the veterinary community is smarter and better educated than the human?
It's more accepted. It's more accepted for pets to have Lyme disease than humans.
Or is it just safer for veterinarians to treat pets?
Because it's accepted, because it's recognized as an acceptable disease for pets. There's a protocol, there's vaccinations.
Or Randi, is it really just safer because you're not going to be subject to a medical board suspending your license or a lawsuit, or so if we're going to put doctors in a position where they are going to have to sacrifice their careers in order to properly diagnose people with Lyme disease, maybe they're just afraid to do that.
They are. That's why things have to change. Pressure to the medical community. I mean, things have to change in order for it to be accepted, for more doctors to practice.
So, Randi, we like to end our podcast by asking our guests to share with our listeners what advice they would give to folks in the community who are not sick. What would you advise people to do to avoid getting to the place where you have found yourself?
I think just be knowledgeable. Going outside is now a risk. Just like you would go outside and put suntan lotion on, you have to put bug spray on now. You have to spray your shoes. You have to be aware of what ticks look like, all the different sizes of ticks. They can be the size of a poppy seed, right? You would never know a tick is attached to you. You could think it's a freckle, a piece of dirt. You have to be aware of what ticks look like, how prevalent it is, and you have to protect yourself. I mean, that's half the battle. I mean, no one is immune here. You can walk outside in your backyard and get bitten, but being aware of it, being aware of the symptoms, all of that will help in diagnosis and recovery. It's just awareness, like anything else.
Thank you for listening to the Tick Boot Camp interview with Randi Goodman. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you would like to learn more about Randi Goodman, please visit Instagram at Think Lyme, or her website that includes a beautifully written blog at www.thinklyme.com. Second, if you enjoyed this episode of the Tick Boot Camp podcast interview with Randi Goodman, please share it with your friends by using the social media buttons you see at the bottom of the post. Third, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify to get the automatic episode updates of our Tick Boot Camp podcast. And finally, Please take a minute to leave us an honest review and rating on iTunes. This is a new effort on our part, and we can really use your help when it comes to creating a show that you would like to listen to. We make a point to read every single one of the reviews we get. Thank you for listening.